I am here. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner Bookland. Good morning, Commissioner Bookland. Good. I was glad people were still hearing me.
Oh,
A few sound issues, it looks like here.
it just took my computer a little while to get up and going this morning.
Right. Well, let me try. Good morning, Marty.
Sorry, Janelle, I'm here. I was delayed for a second. Is that okay?
Yes, perfect. I haven't had a sound check with Kim yet. Oh,
I am
there we
here
go.
now.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Thank you.
Okay, it's 8 o'clock. I don't know what happened to Brad. He was on, but had sound issues. I don't know if he had to leave and restart his computer, but I think we have a quorum with Ken, myself, Ezra, Tom Wilson, and Beth Bookland. So I think we're all of those, and maybe somebody's joined since. Okay, well, I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to all of our guests. Janelle, would you like to go through the virtual meeting guidance, please?
Of course. So good morning, commissioners, members of the public and staff. To help us have a smooth meeting, I'm going to review just a few decorum rules for all. Number 1, please ensure your mic is muted unless you are speaking. Number 2, please state your name before speaking. Number 3, in general, please have your cameras on if possible if you're speaking. You may turn the cameras off if you are experiencing technological challenges. And number 4, as a reminder, the public chat has been disabled, but you can still send messages to the host if need be. And this meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube. So those are the decorum rules. Let's have a great meeting, everyone, and welcome.
Thanks, Janelle. Bill, do you have any announcements?
I do not.
Okay, then we'll move to item 1E, where Alan Grooms is going to introduce the new regulatory performance and process engineer, Carly Amstead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Alan Grooms, Operations Manager, and I'm happy to introduce Carly Amstead as our new Regulatory Performance and Process Engineer. Some of you may have known that Drew Cease had moved on to other things effective 13th of July, and we were very fortunate to have Carly available to start on the 18th. So it didn't quite get an overlap, but we did very close. And so Carly comes to us. She did some work as an undergraduate helping with the pilot plants, doing research there. And then a graduate student, she was actually in charge of some independent research on those pilot plants. We're looking at future processes that we'll be using here, potentially at Nine Springs, starting with the liquid processing phase 2 project that we're expecting to start in the next year. Carly has been I'm going to go a little bit off script here. She's been very eager to dive into some complicated arenas. The regulatory arena is pretty complex. She's already jumping into meetings with the EPA and immersing herself in that. And we're very excited to have her on board so quickly and so capably. She's got a bachelor's of science in biology and a master's in civil engineering from University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I feel like her background and experience already showing that she's going to be a strong contributor for the district in years to come. So if you happen to see Carly, she may be presenting from time to time. Please give her a welcome.
Hey, thank you, Ellen. Welcome, Carly. I don't know that you're on, but you may be watching this at a later point. Okay. Any appearances by the public? Do we have anybody from the public that wishes to appear? Okay, I don't see any hands or anybody saying anything, so we'll move on to the consent calendar where we have several items. The cash statement operating fund, the approval of the minutes of the 14th of July. Sanitary sewer extension plans, we have a couple new ones. Bids and award of contract for Grass Lake Dike restoration. Then we have the bids and award of contract for Nine Springs wastewater treatment plant coating project, and acceptance of work with the Northeast Interceptor joint grouting, and then approval of transaction amount and award of contract for professional services for pump station 6 and pump station 10 connector. Do we have any questions on any of those items before we get a motion to approve?
Hey, Tom, Commissioner Clark, I just have one question on 3E.
Okay, go ahead.
Just the coating project bids. One was at like 55,000, the other one was 300. I was just curious if staff had any feedback on why those bids were so far off from one another.
Sure, this is Eric Rare, Maintenance Reliability Manager. I did estimate that project at about $50,000 to $75,000. The coating bid that was around $300,000 that came from a coating company out of Minnesota who does a lot of national work. So they have a lot more overhead coming down here, and I'm not sure if they estimated the job correctly, but I estimate that job to come in around $50,000 to $75,000. So I'm confident they can do the work for what they say and do a good job.
Okay, that was my main question. I appreciate the feedback, Eric.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ezra, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I noticed in the minutes, it says that the commissioners present included Mary Swanson. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be a Beth Bookland there, not a Mary Swanson. And then it would be correct. Just a little catch we should probably fix.
Yep, good idea. Okay. Anybody else? So they'll get the minutes corrected. So do I have a motion to approve the consent calendars with the correction to the minutes?
Wilson, I'll move that.
A
Thanks.
motion by
Second.
Commissioner. Who was the second?
Commissioner Meyer.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Meyer to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
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 And then that takes us to, that motion carries, that takes us to item 4A, the acceptance of the draft 2023 capital improvement plan. And Bill, did you have anything that you wanted to say before we move into discussion?
I have
or
no
Todd or
introductory
Ben?
remarks. Todd will take it from here.
Okay.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Todd Giebert, Capital Planning Engineer for the district. This is the second of 2 scheduled meetings to discuss the 2023 Capital Improvements Plan. At the last meeting on July 14th, staff from the strategy department presented the draft CIP to the commission. And since then it's been put online for viewing. Today's meeting, I'd like to just briefly summarize some of those takeaways from the July 14th meeting, then take any questions that the commission may have and any feedback they may have, so that in the month of August, we can take that feedback, prepare the final CIP, bring it back as part of the full budget in September, with the goal of getting it approved in the month of October. So the first big takeaway, obviously, with the CIP is expenditures, and it's been a challenge, obviously, with the current economic climate, the way it is. So what's shown on this graph is just a comparison of annual expenditures, comparing the 2022 approved CIP, which is shown with the blue dash line, with the solid blue line, which is the proposed CIP with normal rates of inflation, and then the red line with extra inflation allowances added in. So at first glance, you might think that the total spending in the planning window between the 2022 plan and the 2023 plan is the same. But as I mentioned last time, there's one big caveat, and that's that the heat and power project, which was scheduled to begin next year, has been delayed 3 years. So instead of a large amount of construction in 2026 and 2027, that has been shifted out of the planning window. So really, this new plan does include about $50 million in what I would call new spending. And about a quarter of that, or $13 million, is attributable to the extra inflation allowances that we put in the plan, which is essentially the distance between the blue line and the red line here. So obviously inflation is a large part of those extra allowances that we've allowed into the plan. We all know that inflation is still increasing, 9.1% in June. Seems to be leveling off a little bit, and the forecasts are better, but it's only a broad indicator. Obviously, it includes a lot of things like food, transportation, energy. So I was interested in, other indicators that are more applicable to the sewer construction industry. So I looked at the construction cost index, which you may be familiar with, is how we inflate our connection charge estimates every year, or rates. And this is put out by the Engineering News Record magazine. And it's a 20-city average of prices for Portland cement, lumber, steel, and labor, with a heavy component on labor. So it's a really good indicator of what the construction industry is seeing. So as you can see by the comparison here with the general inflation rate, construction costs started to rise a little bit before inflation did, back in the second half of 2021, but they now agree really well with each other. And if you're an optimist, you might even say that it looks like things may be getting a little bit better here in the month of July. So ENR just put out their second quarter report on kind of the status of where things stand. There's a few benchmarks that they use. Obviously, the construction cost index is the most applicable to us, 7.6% for the month of July. Things are better for construction cost index versus the building cost index, which is 13.5% for July. But the one I really wanted to point out is the materials cost index, because this is where our concern is in the sewer industry. Is some of the things that we rely on, things like electronics, chips and steel for pumps, show much more volatility than other things, the standard construction materials like cement and gravel. So with that in mind, I showed this slide last time. This is how we're approaching adjusting costs in the early years of the plan. We always use 3% as an inflation rate for each year of the plan. We've added another increment to deal with some of the uncertainty that tapers down by 2026. But then the first 2 years, where we're bidding projects the next 2 years, we would propose to increase project costs by 15%. And that's really an average of 10% for pipeline projects and 20% for projects at the treatment plant or at pump stations, where, again, we have more electronics, more controls that we're seeing higher costs for. Now I'd like to just review some of the financial metrics that we talked about, that Ben Neerad talked about last time. And these are just the 3 priorities that the commission adopted a couple of years ago in their long-term financial strategy, and what we considered when we put the plan together. The first is the smooth service charge increases. So this plan proposes to transfer more money directly from the operating fund to the capital fund. And that puts stress on service charges, obviously, more so than doing it for debt. So with that in mind, we try to keep, our goal as a district is to keep service charge increases for next year below 9%. They're going to be higher probably than this 8.2%, but we think we'll come in below 9%. And we're trying to keep at least that level flat throughout the years of this plan. The second priority is to build up our balance in the capital fund. You see here in 2021, we ended the year below our reserve requirement. This is due mainly to the fact that we couldn't get a large loan closed in time and the revenue from that in 2021. You see, we got it very quickly in 2022 and our balance was restored to proper levels. But this plan really focuses on building that up so that we can handle unexpected projects that may come up and also pay for more projects in cash, which is a stated goal of the commission. And then finally, that third goal that I talked about is to limit debt to the extent possible. So paying more with cash as we go along. This doesn't mean we're going to have less debt. We're actually going to have more because our rate of projects is increasing throughout the life of the plan. But the proportionate share of debt will go down from about 80% right now to hopefully 60% by the year 2028. So with that, what we're asking for today is that the commission adopt resolution R7, accepting the draft 2023 capital improvements plan for planning purposes. And we'd be happy to take any questions and feedback so that we can finalize the draft plan and move into the final CIP. Commissioner Howard, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Todd. Anybody have any questions or comments for Todd before we get a motion to act on the draft capital improvement plan, to accept the plan? I don't see any hands. Okay. Todd, I've got a question. So we kind of mentioned this a little bit last meeting when you did the presentation. I don't know, Ben, or be better for it, but with the rise in interest rates, and the Fed just approved another increase yesterday. I know we go by the project cost, but part of the project, the overall cost is the total cost of borrowing. And so even though we get a subsidized rate through the Clean Water Fund loan, does anybody try to figure out how those interest rates are going to affect our service charges with the debt increase over time?
Yeah, so we did raise our interest rate projections, over the life of the plan at the same time that we're raising our project costs. So that is factored into our financial model.
Okay, so I know I saw inflation and I didn't see if you made any comment on interest rates.
And actually, we just got word from the DNR a couple of days ago that I think they had another 2.2% rise in their interest rate just recently. So they're going along with the Fed, and they're expected to rise still.
Yep. Okay.
So they're still within the ranges that we have forecasted for.
Well, that's good then. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve or accept the 2023 capital improvement plan by 2022-07-28-R7?
Wilson, I've looked it over. It looks good to me, and I would move resolution 2022-07-28-R7.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Wilson to approve the resolution accepting the plan. Do we have a second?
This is Sarah. I'll second, and also just thank the team for their really good work on this. I think they balanced a lot of competing priorities very well.
Yep,
Yeah,
well done.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Eskridge. Any further discussion? Okay, I don't see any hands up, so we'll get a vote. All those in favor of approving the resolution, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None, motion carries. Good, okay. Thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you.
And then that will take us to item 5, the Chief Engineer and Director's Report. Bill, you're up for that?
I am up. I have a couple things. First, thank you all for your support of the capital planning program. I appreciate it. My first item you might have heard about in the news. Early in the morning of July 11th, a water main broke on Regent Street, just a little bit east of Camp Randall. And we have a manhole and a 24-inch cast iron sewer in that area, which were undermined by that water. They're intact for now, but they're going to need some attention to ensure they're okay, and most importantly, to get them shored up again so that we don't have any problems there. Kathy Wunderlich, our Director of Engineering, is leading that response. And my main point for you here is that because this can't wait, we're going to have some emergency expenses under our procurement policy, and I'll authorize those as acting CED. You'll recall we did the same thing for the Beltline force main leak last April. We cannot make a reliable cost estimate at this point, but we're talking up to a few $100,000, which we can manage thanks to our capital fund balance. And we'll give you another update if and when there's news to report. Now, as I recall from the Beltline incident, you're not interested in blow-by-blow updates every commission meeting, so we won't do that, but please let us know if you would like more frequent updates than we give, but we'll come back when we have specific news. The second item is a sort of highlight a success story. As part of our chloride reduction program, we've entered into an agreement with Plumbers Local Union 75, and that union covers 14 counties, southeastern Wisconsin, Dane, Milwaukee, and a variety of others. And they represent over 1,600 plumbers. So this agreement is to do 3 things related to chloride. First is for us to help with training on softener tune-ups, salt-efficient water treatments, and it includes a kind of train the trainer element to get that word out. The second thing is for us to help set up demonstration installations in the locals. They have a hands-on water treatment lab. And the third is to work together with a local on an episode of Building Wisconsin TV, which I did not know exists, but it's a regular television program on these topics to kind of get the word out. So this is actually kind of a big deal because working with the plumbers union like this has a couple of important benefits. Perhaps the most important is that, and this is obvious, plumbers are on the spot when decisions are being made, and they're there as trusted experts and they can give up-to-date knowledge. Working with the local helps everyone in the region have kind of a consistent and appropriate message and have novel solutions ready to offer. And then finally, kind of the underlying point of all of this is that softener optimizations and replacements, they give sort of small incremental improvements, which add up to a significant improvement in overall chloride loads. The last item, I do want to make a few notes on future meetings here. And just to make sure you're aware, the August 25th meeting, which is virtual, will have another closed session as part of the CED's regular review process. The September 29th meeting, also virtual, has a public hearing on the budget. And then the October 13th meeting, which is our next in-person meeting, is when commission deliberations are going to happen. And as always, please let us know as soon as you can if you have any planned absences, especially as we get close to budget acceptance, budget approval. We want to make sure we don't have any quorum problems. So that's all I have. The next item is the WINS update, which I believe Kim Meyer is going to.
Hey, Bill,
Yes,
it's Wilson. Can you do that one more time with those dates?
Those
So
those
the
dates,
August
let's-
meeting is virtual.
August,
We'll have a closed
everything is
session.
virtual. Everything is virtual
Yep.
until October 13th.
Okay, there you go. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bill and President Hubble, I was just going to mention it might be worth letting all the commissioners know about the change that came up last minute on the auditors, which were scheduled for today.
Sure, I'll comment on that. It's a schedule change. There's no significance here, but we had originally planned to have the auditors come and present the annual financial audit. There's a couple last minute documents that were not ready, so we've moved it a meeting back. And so spoiler alert, we have a clean audit coming, so there's no substantive issue. It's just a procedural issue.
Okay, thanks, Bill, and thanks for that, Ezra. The reminder on the audit was supposed to presentation today, but it's got moved. Okay, nothing else, Bill? So it takes us to the Yahara Winds report. Kim Meyer.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kim Meyer. I'm the Watershed Program Coordinator here at MMSD. I'm just going to share an update on Yahara Winds. Okay, so first I'm going to start with just a quick review on what, why, and who of Yahara Winds. I'll share the progress along with a little bit on a watershed effort we've got going on. So Yahara Winds is, as you all know, adaptive management, but it's a collective of many stakeholders that have impact on phosphorus in our watershed. And really all sources are working together under the umbrella of Yahara Winds to improve water quality in our watershed. So it's more effective and typically less expensive than everyone working independently. And there were two drivers to starting up Yahara Winds. The first one is the Rock River TMDL, total maximum daily load. So on the left-hand side is the Rock River watershed, which we are part of. You zoom in on the right is the outline of Dane County with the lakes in the middle, and the red boundary is the Yahara watershed. It goes up into Columbia, it's mostly in Dane, and goes down into Rock County. But basically the TMDL spelled out who and how many pounds of phosphorus need to be reduced to meet a standard that's set forth to improve water quality throughout the watershed. So everyone's got basically an allocation, and majority of those folks signed on to Yahara Winds to meet the TMDL. The main driver for MMSD beyond the TMDL was the Phosphorus Rule. So the raw wastewater coming into MMSD is around 6 milligrams per liter through treatment, the biological treatment that occurs here, and the sources or the products that are recovered and reused, the biosolids and the struvite. A lot of that phosphorus goes into those products, but they still have 0.2 to 0.4 milligrams per liter left in the effluent, which doesn't get us down to that level of 0.075. So in combination of the TMDL and then this Phosphorus Rule, Yahara Winds was created. So there was a pilot project in 2012. And by the time 2017 came, when the full-scale adaptive management plan started, all the folks on this list signed up to join Yahara Winds. So the folks on the left are the Intergovernmental Agreement Signatories, which include townships, villages, cities, along with not only MMSD, but there's two other wastewater treatment plants in our watershed, Stoughton and Oregon, and then the DNR Fish Hatchery and the UW-Madison signed on. So all these folks, like I mentioned, they have an allocation of pounds of phosphorus they need to reduce. Some of them are handling some of those pounds independently, but many of them are going to be covered through this group Yahara Winds. So the funds are collected and then they are paid to folks that are working with farmers out in the watershed. So Dane County Land Conservation Office, Rock County, and then Farmer Group Yahara Pride Farm are the main people that are working with farmers, creating change on the landscape to reduce phosphorus. So majority of that money goes there. Some of the money goes to USGS for water monitoring, as well as Rock River Coalition for volunteer coordination for water monitoring. This Yahara Winds group is governed by an executive committee, which Marty Griffin here at MMSD has a permanent position as president, because MMSD is one of the larger stakeholders in this initiative. The city of Madison also has a place on the executive committee, and then the other folks are voted on by the groups that they represent. So this is a chart showing progress. I just want to note up front, this is a chart from 2020, and I'm going to show on the next slide some information on 2021. But the blue lines are the goals through the 20-year project. So as I mentioned, starting in 2017, it ramps up throughout the years to 2036 with a goal of around 96,000 pounds reduced. The green bar is the actual pounds reduced based on the reports provided to us by those three partners. As I mentioned, Dane County, Rock County Land Conservation, and Yahara Pride Farm. So they've had some really good progress. We've always been ahead of schedule as far as pounds reduced. So there's a lot of interest in the watershed. So going into 2021, we had a goal of 38,000 pounds to reduce. We actually had 88,000 pounds reported to us. So it's a really big jump. And obviously we're happy about this pound reduction, but we also want to be cautious. The majority of the pounds reported were annual pounds. So we have a collection of what we call more carryover pounds that are collected through more permanent practices like grass waterways or barnyard improvements, things that are more permanent. And then we have annual pounds, which are annual decisions. So these pounds would come from things like a farmer putting in cover crops, doing no tillage, or other conservation practices that are decided on an annual basis. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of interest, and a lot of folks out in the countryside are interested in participating. But we don't want to get too excited about this because it's kind of a wait and see what the trend is in the coming years. The other thing that we're working on is that each of the partners have a way of counting their pounds, and it's very clear in the adaptive management plan how those pounds should be counted as far as what models to use. But some of the parameters put into the models, there's a lot of variability in that, and you can have some variability in what comes out at the end of the model. So we're working through that right now to try to better align those three partners. So we're comparing apples to apples. This is a map of the full watershed broken down by stream reach. So all of the stream reaches in this map, with the exception of Nine Springs Creek, all of them we are above our goals for reductions. So Nine Springs is the one outlier. We have not met our goals at any point, I don't believe, during the adaptive management plan. And the reason that this is that the majority of Nine Springs is urbanized. All the other watersheds have a piece that is agriculture, and there's land to make an impact on. MMSD is the largest landholder in Nine Springs Creek as far as like open land. So we're going to be looking at the properties here to see what we can do to help save phosphorus. And then the next plan is to work closer with the urban side of things and see what we can do on that. Here's a chart showing the water quality from USGS gauging stations. As I mentioned, we have Rock River Coalition and USGS. These are just USGS data points. Prior to the project, you can see points are kind of all over the place. And then soon after 2017, things really start to close up and move forward together. So, we've had some variability in weather in the last 5 years. We've had a lot of rain events, then we've had really dry. So we're hoping that this trend continues on a downward projection. And, these practices that are happening out in the landscape continue to have an impact. The one thing to notice on here is the red line. Dorn Creek Highway M, Dane County Land Conservation has the Suck the Muck project. And this was one of the first stretches of stream that they worked on. And you can see a pretty quick drop in water quality from that project. So though Yahara Winds doesn't pay for any of those projects, the projects that Dane County are doing in the Suck the Muck effort are really beneficial to our program. And then I'm just gonna talk about some of the practices that are really helping out the program. This is a picture of a farmer composting. And this one, I think a lot of people think composting is kind of old school. It's not a new practice, but in the agriculture world, it definitely is new. There's a lot of things that people are still learning about it. There's three main reasons why we really like this practice for Yahara Winds is that one, it reduces the volume and farmers can spread it in fields that maybe need more phosphorus than others. They can haul it possibly out of the watershed or send it to neighbors where maybe it could be better utilized. Two, this will help reduce some of the winter spreading that occurs in the watershed, specifically north of the lakes. There's a lot of animals up there, a lot of manure. This is a way that manure can be handled and held over the winter time and then spread throughout the growing season. And then three, the other really awesome thing about compost is that during the composting process, there's different forms of phosphorus, and the dissolved phosphorus is the one that really gets into streams really quickly. So basically when people haul manure and water runs over that, dissolved phosphorus joins that water and goes to the stream. During composting, a lot of that phosphorus goes to the particulate form. And the cool thing about that is that when you spread compost and water runs over it during a storm event, there actually needs to be movement of the compost to contribute phosphorus to the stream. So that change in how the phosphorus acts is really important when we're talking about manure management and water quality. I'm going to skip a couple here. I know we're short. I don't want to take too much time. This is just a photograph of a stream buffer. In the beginning of the project, there was a lot of effort put into buffering the Yahara. And so these are seen kind of all over the watershed. This pictures from Rock County. On the right-hand side where the trees are is where the Yahara River is. And then as you can see this buffer, the farmer can harvest it for grass if he wants to, but it also protects the stream from the farmland. This one is a really nice project because the county and federal money is pretty stringent on how it's spent. There's some very clear guidelines on how those funds can be used on the farmland. This is a project that probably wouldn't be possible without Yahara winds. And what this was actually a kind of a dry lot where there were animals. There was no grass growing. It was all dirt. And there was a big gully in the middle. The phosphorus levels were really high because there was no cycling of phosphorus occurring here. So Rock County worked with this farmer. They had the animals removed from the space, put a permanent vegetation in, and then protected that gully. So this was it was a small project, but it actually had a lot of savings for phosphorus. And then I wanted to talk about cover crops. Again, I think people see cover crops as being pretty basic. But when we're talking about an area that has a lot of dairy animals, it can have a really huge impact. So a large portion of dairy rations include corn silage. So corn that's grown, it's all across the countryside right now. When it's harvested as a grain, there's a ton of residue that's left on the surface, protecting the soil and keeping the phosphorus in place. But a large portion of corn in the dairy area is harvested for silage. So they take the entire plant and they ensile it and ferment it for feed. So what you're left with is just this golden, you can see those golden strips of the stock, and the rest would be open soil. So in this photo, the farmers put some cover crops in. And the farmers that have a lot of manure have kind of changed up how they manage cover crops, which has been really beneficial. This is a picture of a field that was corn silage. And instead of spreading manure and then doing a cover crop, they're actually putting the cover crop in right after harvest to get that crop growing in the fall. And then they low disturbance manure into it. So here's a photo after that application where the farmer drove over that cover crop, and you can see those strips where the manure was injected. And after a little rain, that cover crop will pop right back up, and this will provide some great protection in our watershed in the fall, and it'll be ready to grow right away in the spring. And then also manure isn't applied on the surface where it can leave the field. And then the last practice I want to talk about, as I mentioned, low disturbance manure injection. The MetroGrow program here at MMSD is part of this process also. As you know, there's been some investment in new applicators. Historically, MetroGrow was applied, so everything is injected in MetroGrow. But historically, to inject that, there was full width tillage done. So that toolbar on the back of the machine, it would turn all the soil behind it. And now they've moved, a lot of their equipment now is moved to this low disturbance injector. And as you can see, it just tills up that little area where the material is applied. The really cool thing about this is that not only is MetroGrow's material applied in a more conservative fashion, and there's going to be significantly less phosphorus leaving fields from these sites. The other bonus is that now the farmer that has cropping to do after application has a lot more options. Before, when there was full width tillage, the farmer would have to go in and do some additional tillage to level the field and then plant their crop. Now what they can do is some farmers have taken this and they've no-tilled into it, or they've done really minor tillage and then planted. So it's given the farmer after application a lot more opportunities to implement conservation on their farm. Oops. And then lastly, this is one of the watershed efforts I wanted to just share. As I mentioned in that compost piece, there's a lot of benefits to it, but there's also a lot of things that are a challenge. And one of the biggest challenges is that there is not good information on nutrient availability from the compost. So farmers have been pretty hesitant to utilize it on a large scale because fertility is really important. They need to know what they're getting from the products they apply on their fields. So this project is a partnership between Yahara Winds, MMSD, Yahara Pride Farm, and UW Extension. So we worked with the UW to put together a replicated field trial, and we've got composted bedded packed manure from a dairy farm. We've got just the manure from a dairy farm, composted biosolids cake, and then biosolids cake. And we've applied these at different rate. We applied these at available nitrogen. We also applied commercial fertilizer at different rates of nitrogen. And we're just going to track this over the course of the growing season so we can get a better handle on what the farmer is getting from these products during that first growing season. So hopefully this will answer a really big question that a lot of farmers have on this product, and will also help the MetroGrow program as they continue to explore different options there with biosolids. And that's all I have today. And I did want to mention the Yahara Winds website. It used to be a page on the MMSD website. There's their own website right now, and they've got the annual report is on there. We've got a podcast. There's a map to identify where you are in the watershed, and then obviously the minutes and agenda items as well. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
Okay, thank you very much, Kim, for the informative presentation. Anybody have any questions for Kim? Okay, Kim, I have one. You mentioned the annual loadings of phosphorus early on in your presentation. Is some of that due to the lack of rainfall that we had last summer, so that the phosphorus that may have been applied through manure and that had more of a chance to dissolve or get into the soil rather than run off?
So were you talking about the water quality data that I shared?
Yeah.
Yeah, in 2020, there was a big drop, and that was really dry in 2020, and that was attributed to the lower flows that we had. So obviously, if you have big storms, you have a lot more material leaving fields, and we just didn't have a lot of that in that year. But either way, we're hoping that a lot of the practices that farmers are doing are going to protect against those big storms as they show up.
Okay. One other question: how big of a test plots are you doing in that last with the different the compost, the manure, the cake and stuff?
Yeah, they're 40 by 10 foot, and there's 10 of them replicated 4 times. So it's not a very large plot, but that was recommended as a starting point.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Tom, you have your hand up?
Yeah, Kim, hey, is it possible to go back to that chart you had that had, the different phosphorus levels at the different creeks?
Yeah.
Please.
This one. There we go.
Yeah, that one. Okay, so I just wanted to mention something about Dorn Creek, and I'm old and retired, so I'm repeating myself probably here. I just wanted to point out to people that Kim gave a lot of credit to Dane County, well deserved, for the Dorn Creek Suck the Muck program and doing a lot of another Suck the Muck program actually on 6 Mile Creek in Westport too. But one of the things to point out is that is really a tremendous team effort, and it includes the Yahara Winds. There were some programs that were funded by Yahara Winds to farmers, cover crops that have increased in that watershed, project that was done along Mefford Road at a bridge that was sort of constricting Dorn Creek. And so when there would be larger rains, soil would come off and it would get stuck on each side of that bridge. And the UW did a program where they studied it, and then I believe it was the county that then ended up doing a program where they cleaned out the muck that was on both sides of that bridge. The city of Middleton, the town of Westport, put tremendous standards on the community of Bishops Bay. And you can see along Highway Q, just north of Middleton, all of the stormwater structures are in place to collect all the water that would have gone directly into Dorn Creek. And the DNR has purchased properties along Dorn Creek over the years, and they have been rehabilitated into prairie. That's made a huge difference, and the county has too. So it's, and Yahara Winds has funded other projects as well. So I'm trying to, just express that we all work together in all of these projects all across the watershed, and it's just wonderful to have someone like Kim and like Marty that can get all these different governments to work together, and the farmers to work together, and even the larger governments to work together to get results. And I just wanted to point that out because I don't think Kim and Marty don't give themselves enough credit for the way they work together to make things happen here and involve all of the team that really works here. So thanks, Kim, and thanks, Marty.
Thank you, Tom.
Oh, one other project that was done there, I forgot to give credit to the Village of Wanakee. There was a tributary that went into Dorn Creek that had a big area of stormwater detention near Woodland Drive, and it would collect water, and then slowly that water would drain out towards through a farm field, big farm field area into Dorn Creek. And the village, because of their own drainage problems, this little pond, which was actually also a soccer field at one time, started to go into the houses nearby. So the village did a project about the very beginning of this time period, 2014, 2015, where they redirected that water and did a project where they directed it into a large pond more towards the middle of the town, so that the water was going towards kind of reversing the way this water worked. It went through various levels of detention and retention till it got to a bigger pond, and then that water would then go into 6 Mile Creek and not Dorn Creek. That was a huge change as well. So I wanted to give some credit to the Village of Wanakee for taking that up too. Again, just one of the other partners that's involved here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. Yeah, I agree. It's a real team effort, and that was the whole purpose of Yahara Winds, is to bring everybody together to do what is happening. So it's a good success story. Okay, anybody else have any comments? Okay, I don't see any hands up, so thank you, Kim. That will move us to Paul with the regulatory and legal review.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Me okay? Yeah. Okay, great. Kim is a tough act to follow, but let me start with a brief review of some of the legal services from the month of June. Another busy month. On the regulatory side, we were involved with working with Marty and his folks on a new guidance document DNR had on variances, something which could be an issue in our bachelor fleet deliberation. So that was an important thing for us to get involved in. We also had some questions on pre-treatment industrial use permits, as well as some other bachelor creek items. There were a number of miscellaneous employment inquiries and issues, ranging from vacation inquiries, some employee accommodation issues, and some issues on seasonal employees. On the contract front, we had some contract issues with a chemical supplier. We also were looking at questions involving easements and condemnation for certain rights of way. working with Kathy Wunderlich's group on some of those issues. There were also a couple of general items. There always seems to be some open records, and that was true in June as well. Some questions on contractor records, but also some interesting questions on the extent to which the district could restrict public access to its facility from a public safety standpoint while still allowing appropriate public access. So we working with the district on some of those issues. So a fairly busy month. Shifting gears to the regulatory side of things, there are also a couple of things that are worth noting. As you may recall, in our current rule process, no rule is complete until it goes to legislative review. One of the rules that was kind of caught in legislative review for a long time was a rule on biocriteria that related to phosphorus and some site-specific limits. And while those are probably not going to be of much help to the district, the rule that was adopted by the department had received some review by legislature, and those issues were finally resolved, so that rule will become final. Also coming final was the PFAS rules for drinking water and surface water standards. And that will be helpful as we move forward on the PFAS issues. The other kind of new development is that after many years, the department has formed a advisory committee to deal with anti-degradation rules. And those are the rules that come into play whenever a discharger has either a new discharge or an increase in discharge. And rules that currently are on the books have been on the books, for 20 years or more, and are now in the process of revision. My partner Vanessa is serving on that advisory committee, and they had their first meeting just last week. Not a lot happened, mostly just kind of a meet and greet kind of meeting, but there will be another 3 or 4 meetings this year and into next year as this rule process moves forward. So we will be continuing to track that as well. So that's all I have, but I'd be glad to entertain any questions anybody.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody have any questions for Paul? Anybody have any questions for Paul? Okay, Paul, I don't see any hands, so thank you very much for your report. Okay. That will take us to Alan, your operations report.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Alan Grooms, Operations Manager. Assuming you can see my screen okay. Oh, I gotta hit share. That should do it. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so I'll be presenting the July operations report, which is looking month in the rearview mirror for the month of June 2022. Plant performance really good overall, I guess in a short phrase. We're right in the historical ranges for most of the parameters. On the ammonia, you can see 0.1 milligrams per liter was our monthly average off a 1.1 milligram per liter limit for the month. So we're at the lower end of that. So we're doing a good job of getting complete treatment. CBOD numbers as well. Those are the main ones that demand oxygen from us. So we're doing a good job keeping up with that, getting the bugs supplied with air, having our process take care of those pollutants and removing those from the wastewater. Phosphorus 0.38, that's on the higher end of our normal range, as is, you'll see total suspended solids 5.5 milligrams per liter. Again, they're not lockstep, but they do tend to track together because, Kim mentioned we do the biological phosphorus removal here at the plant. That that puts that the phosphorus within that biology. So when we do have an excursion with solids, that carries some phosphorus with it, the effluent. So the chloride numbers, kind of what's become the middle of the range as we've run a drier period. All of these are concentration-based limits. In the case of the chloride, there's really not much we can do to treat that. So moving that to a higher limit is really a lot of it. That's a function of we just don't have as much dilution water coming in because we're fairly dry. And then our fecal numbers, we're in our seasonal disinfection period. 72 most probable number per 100 milliliter is where we averaged. Pretty much right in the historical range of that. The new UV system's performing really well, and we're well below our permit limits on that criteria as well. So I don't have any red flags to throw at, but if the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them before moving to the next slide. Okay, moving on to resource recovery slide. And I realize talking to people, my mind may work, everybody's mind works a little differently. So for me, it's like engineer, math types, I'm looking at this, it's like, June, halfway through the year, 50% through the year. So these numbers, roughly speaking, you could double them and kind of project what we're on track for the year. So, in the case of clean water, if you double that, you're 13.2 estimated. So it's kind of, supportive of what we all kind of intuitively, I think, know that we're on track to be about the same or maybe a little less than 2021 as far as overall flows. If any questions about the recent rains we had, last weekend we had some pretty heavy rains. Really didn't do much as far as a change in our base flows coming to the plant. So we're still pretty dry around here. Again, I feel like we're getting enough rain to support lawns, support crops, but we're not flooding out by any means. Reused effluent, that's our W4, that's basically taking the place of city water that we might purchase otherwise and use that in plant processes. We're actually making better use of that than in past years. We're a little bit higher on the use for that. A lot of that's attributable to cooling water for our digested sludge. And then there are some other processes we do use that for. So, and then our biogas, it's actually maybe I'll point that out. It doesn't really jump out on this graph, but if we maintain this track, we are looking to probably set a record for overall biogas production for Nine Springs plant. We'd be well over 300. This would put us out to 341 million cubic feet. I don't know that I expect that to hold, but I think that is attributable to higher plant loadings. If you may recall in June when gosh, it was just last month, Drew presented the CMAR to the commission for review, that we had a couple of areas where we had 90% of the plant loading on the report card came to the plant 2 different months. Those were kind of unusual. We don't usually see those, but the last major upgrades we've had to the plant as far as actual forward treatment process for limits was actually what we would call the 9th edition. And that harkens back to 1996, 1997, 1998 timeframe. So we're about 24 years into that. Usually you're looking at a planning period of about 20 years. So it's, this is our opportunity coming up to take a look and make those improvements to the treatment processes so we can continue to meet our treatment objectives. This biogas, tying this back to where I started on this short tangent, the biogas is another sign that, that higher amount of biogas, we're not running the digesters more efficiently. We're simply getting a higher amount of loading. And that's, this is reaffirming that what we are seeing on the influent loadings coming to the plant when we review the billings. Todd does that with periodically with you. All this data, what's in the spreadsheet, this is affirming that is actually a real number. This is the result of that higher loading coming to the plant and being biologically treated. So any questions on this slide? Okay. The other resource recovery slide we have, biosolids storage at the end of the month of June, 55.6% full. We are currently hauling out to summer wheat fields with the Metro kind of some of the, Kim gave you a good perspective there on some of the application methods we use in some of those slides. So that number is, we're actually coming down. As of this morning, we had projections out into October. And so we're in really good shape on storage. Cake production, we're done with that for probably the next month or two until we get some need for that cleared out, we start looking at resuming production. And then the MetroGrow production number we have here is basically a function of what we're putting to the MetroGrow tanks. It's not what's being hauled out, it's what we're sending to them. So it's the production side of that. So we're right on track with what we would have seen in 2021, maybe a little bit less. And that, that's, the solids have to go as either the cake biosolid or the MetroGrow biosolid. So if we make more cake, we make less to the liquid tank. If we don't make much cake, that pushes the MetroGrow storage number up. So, and you can kind of see that that relationship in that graph as well. Any questions on this slide? With that, that's actually all I have.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. Good to see things are running well. The plant. Okay, that takes us to the future meeting schedule. Bill kind of covered that the next in-person meeting would be the first meeting in October. So the next 2 months, as of right now, unless something happens, the next 2 months worth of meetings will be virtual. So I just want to verify or make comment that Bill commented on. Make sure that you let them know if you're not going to be attending. I know Sarah's going to miss the first meeting in August. And so that's with Sarah, we're missing a person. So then if anybody's plans to be absent, please let people know sooner than later. So we know if we have before we get into a quorum issue on the day of the meeting. I don't want to have that happen, but so far we've always avoided that. Okay.
Commissioner Havel, this is Janelle.
Yes.
Just to be clear, if they could, please let me know, because I'm the one kind of tracking on if we have quorum.
So if you're going to be absent,
Janelle.
Yep, let Janelle know, and then she'll track the quorum, and then she can let Bill and I know if we're running into quorum issues or not for the meeting. So,
Yep.
Okay,
Tom.
Thank you, Janelle. That will take us to any other business. Seeing none.
Hang on a second, Tom. Someone has been trying.
Yes.
And I don't know who it was.
I don't know who it was either, Bill, but I did hear the same thing.
Yeah, it's Brad. I'm coming to you live and hopefully clear via my cell phone. I just wanted to let you know that I will also be missing the August 11th meeting.
Noted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brad. So that's 3 seats out of the 9. So that leaves us with 6, and we need 5 for a quorum. So if we have 2 more absent, we wouldn't be able to hold a meeting. So if anybody plans to be absent or something arises, please let Janelle know as soon as possible. Thank you, Brad. Okay, any other business?
Wilson.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson.
I would move we adjourn.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Wilson to adjourn, second by
Commissioner Clark.
Commissioner Clark. I saw him smiling. So all those in favor of the adjournment at 9:01, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the week.
Bye, all. Thank you.
Everybody.
Take care.
Lynn, just give me a ring when you're available, okay?
Will do.